I want to go across to General Nambiar on this because the soldiers whose morale is cited by those who don't want to reveal the report seem to forget that several of those soldiers are dead. The others are mortally hurt and injured, and I know so many army officers who feel so bad about the manner in which the political establishment let them down. But we heard Wajahat Habibullah say there could be consequences on defense preparedness. The border issues are still live. We also heard a counter from Kuldeep Nayyar saying the tactics have changed, the weapons have changed, operations have changed. This report needs to be made public ASAP. General Nambiar.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to make a couple of points on this regard. Firstly, as far as the contents of the report are concerned, as everyone has said, these have long been known. There's nothing which has been brought out or revealed now which was not known earlier. In fact, almost everything in that report has been in the public domain for years and years. It's been commented upon. All that has happened now, I suppose, that it's on the net and it's being portrayed as though it's just been revealed. So that's the first point I'd like to make. Actually, the report now has a purely historical value, nothing else. And I would like to just make a comment on what Mr. Habibullah said and also what Mr. Kuldeep Nayyar said. See, I think basically the reservations about releasing or putting it out in the public domain relate not so much to the operational preparedness as to the political fallout.
Absolutely.
Because I think whatever references are there can be a source of some political embarrassment. And as far as my own understanding or reading of the situation goes, I think the resistance to its complete release into the public domain is more from the Ministry of External Affairs than from the Ministry of Defense. Because when the history of the 1962 conflict was referred to the Military Operations Directorate for clearance, I was then the Director General of Military Operations. And I recall having consulted the Director General of Military Intelligence and others, we had no problems with the release of the history of the 1962 conflict. I'm not now talking of the Henderson Brooks report, because whether that is to be released or not is a question that the government has to decide on.
No, but some very specific points have been made. One second. General Nambiar, sir, some specific points have been made. Yes, one that it will impact morale. The second is that this has consequences for India's defense preparedness. Are you then saying, before I go across to my political guest, that this is a bogey that's being put out by the political establishment? The guise is being created that this will impact morale?
As far as operational preparedness is concerned, I don't think the release of the report can affect the operational preparedness today, because the whole environment has changed, the equipment has changed, our strengths, relative strengths have changed, so the report will have no relevance on the operational preparedness.
That's very, very significant.
As far as the morale is concerned, let me tell you, as a person, I was a person who had spent 7 years in Indian Army uniform in 1962. And believe me, I mean, what that report brought out was, I think, to many of us of my generation, it reflected the arrogance of the political establishment, the incompetence of some sections of the senior military leadership. But it made us proud in terms of our colleagues of the junior leadership and the rank and file. It really was, because I think the junior leadership and the rank and file acquitted themselves in tremendous
General Nambiar, I think you've made some very compelling points. You've made some very compelling points. And you've literally blown to smithereens the entire argument that was laid out initially by Wajahat Habibullah about why this report was not made public. You're saying that there's a political dimension to this. I want to go across to Amibain Yagnik and also to Nirmala Sitharaman. To Nirmala Sitharaman first. Madam, the one thing that the government says in its defense is that it's not just the Congress that chose not to make this report public. There were NDA governments in the interim. There was also a third front, alternate front government. All of them in their wisdom decided not to make it public. So don't blame the Congress because they're concerned about the Gandhis. The BJP too, in national interest, took the same decision. Nirmala Sitharaman.
I'm quite used to this argument coming from the Congress, and it doesn't surprise me at all. We can, always draw parallels between both the political parties and say, I have not released it, so you have also not released it, let us not talk about it. But the fact remains today, whether you like it or not, thanks to some journalist who thought he's waited enough for, declassification of documents, and since it's not happening, he brought it out. Whether you like it or not, it's out now. My question is there a harm in talking about it? Not certainly, because as Mr. Nambiar says very clearly, having worn the uniform with a great sense of pride, he very clearly says it doesn't have an implication. It won't have an implication on the operational things, because rightly after 5 decades, your strategies, the way in which you approach your defense decisions are going to be very different today, and it's not going to hurt us immediately talking so much in the open. And if I don't sound cynical, defense preparedness has had its own negative impact under this government, and I'm not going to go on it now. But the fact remains, 50 years is long enough for us to have waited. No harm to learn lessons from it. And if there are
Ma'am, before I go across to Amiben Yagnik, between 98 and 2004, why didn't your government make the report public, ma'am?
Very well, we'll answer that when it comes. Today my question is there a harm? Is there a harm for us to discuss this?
But you had an opportunity too. No, there's absolutely no harm about discussing this, which is why we put it on center stage. But you had 6 years. Why didn't your government make the report public?
I will disclose that. But the question is, what is wrong in talking about it now?
No, there is nothing wrong. But you don't have an answer either.
Bharat Verma
wants to come in and make a point.
No, why should I answer that? Why should I? Today, if you want to bring in equal playing field every time for something which is a Congress's, failure, it is easy to say, why didn't BJP do in its 6 years?
No, because the question, Bharat Verma wants to come in and make a point.
The question here is not X, Y, Z government. That is not the question. This government did not do. Now, there were a lot of flaws in the Kargil War, and those flaws were then studied, and a Kargil review committee approved by a group of ministers was approved. So, for Kargil, there was a report, and where it was sensitive matter, those matters were blanked out for public, but that report was discussed. So, the blame game of X government or Y government is not important. What is important is when you look into this report and you see how this forward policy got us into trouble, because we were not prepared, we did not have adequate resources, our lower formations were informing general headquarters had General Kaul appointed at CGS, a non-combatant general who was directly connected to Nehru. So to protect Nehru's legacy, this report was not released.
I think what we've established in the first part of this debate, and I now want to go across to Amiben Yagnik, is that you've heard from military experts like General Nambiar, who are saying this has nothing to do with the morale of our troops. This has to do with the political legacy of the Nehru family to which you are beholden, which is why India's military history is being kept secret, because Jawaharlal Nehru goofed up, and that's the reality. There was one historical, tactical, strategic blunder after another. Miss Yagnik, do you hear me or not? Miss Yagnik, do you hear me? No, she's saying she doesn't hear me. So I'll go across to her in just a moment. But I can see Wajahat Habibullah has his hand up, because you made in the beginning of the program an argument about how troop morale would be impacted, operational tactics will get revealed. You heard General Nambiar say that things have changed over the last 50 years. Your argument doesn't hold at all. How do you respond to General Nambiar, sir?
Therefore, may I please clarify?
Yes, sir.
The decision to arrive not to disclose was not taken in consultation with any political party. In fact, the Defence Secretary at that time was Vijay Singh. He handed over the report to us and said that he would have no intervention. We should take a decision on our own. Although I do say that when we gave the decision, he said that that was a decision that he approved of. But the defense of the non-release, the need to keep it secure and not to disclose it, was that of the Army headquarters. The entire argument was given by the Army headquarters. Now, General Nambiar, of course, is a highly experienced and respected general, but the fact is this was what was given by the presentation and the arguments of the Army headquarters, where, as I told you, we actually saw the report and did not even ask for it to be sent over to us in order to to adhere to the sensitivities of the army. So the question of whether it was disclosed or not disclosed, and so far as the error of the forward policy is concerned, I will be very frank with you. Obviously that error comes out quite clearly. The forward policy was a failure. Not only was the forward policy a failure, the Defense Ministry and the Ministry of External Affairs gave two different versions of the McMahon line, an established line, to the Chinese government, by the contradiction of which, by one of which plans, the forward policy meant that the picket was located well inside China. So that was one of those errors which has been disclosed. No use my keeping a secret. It was disclosed in Neville Maxwell's work in 1962. So this is not something that has come up now. The question, the failure of government in this regard, and therefore the need to
but several questions have been raised of the Congress.